what we'd like you to do is to mix up as much as possible for the benefit of this initial exercise. And yeah, there's no note taking, so don't worry about taking your stuff with you. And yeah, you're going to be a little bit crowded around the tables, but just make 3 groups, 2 of 7, and I'm assuming that these people are coming in and going to turn this corner and come in here. Okay, so it's important to be able to see all the name tags.
Let's tie a knot in yours.
We are going to introduce you to what we call a spiritual practice. It is a group spiritual practice. Some of you might know the work of Eric Law, The Wolf Shall Dwell with the Lamb. This is one of his practices. We have modified it a little bit. We call it grace margin. Grace margin. And its whole purpose is to allow all the voices at the table the opportunity to be heard. Grace margin is used in a group anytime the group has some kind of an issue that it's trying to get more insight about. We Presbyterians traditionally have been very driven by Robert's Rules of Order and trying to use debate logic, and things like that. This operates in a different way. So be prepared to do some things differently and internally experience some things differently because you're having to pay attention to following the process. When I'm done giving the directions, Beverly is going to do a reading from John 21, and then is going to pose a question. So each of you will have the opportunity to respond to the question in light of the text. So right now, find out in your circle whose birthday is closest to today. Find out that right now, and that person, stick up your hand, please.
Everybody in August? January.
Yeah, 23rd.
You will be the one to start this, but you will not be the first one to respond to the question. Because the way grace margin works is everybody will have a chance to invite someone else to speak. So put your hands up again, please. These 3 people, once the question is posed, will look around their table and decide whom they would like to invite. And here's how you do the invitation. Word for word as follows. Nancy, I invite you to speak. Becky, I invite you to speak. Greg, I invite you to speak. That's all you say. Okay. I've done this sometimes with teenagers and they'll go, yo. What we're trying to do is express a discipline of respect and caring for everyone in their voice. When Nancy is invited to speak, she has an option, and all of you will have an option. Nancy can speak, or she can pass. When she is speaking, if she chooses to speak, and when anyone speaks, the rest of us sit quietly. We don't drum our fingers on the table, we don't make faces, we don't laugh or groan, we don't take notes and things like that. We sit quietly and listen attentively to Nancy. When Nancy is finished speaking, the whole table sits silently for 10 full seconds. And if you like to talk, that will seem like an eternity. 10 full seconds. Then Nancy invites someone to speak the same way that I just described. If Nancy chooses not to speak when she's invited, she says, I pass. If she says, I pass, you have the 10 seconds of silence. So whether she speaks or says, I pass, There's 10 seconds of silence in between each person who is invited. Okay. So then Nancy invites somebody else to speak. Maybe Nancy invites Greg to speak, and then Greg speaks. When he's done, 10 seconds of silence. Greg invites Rebecca to speak, and so on. You got it? So let's say at this table everyone has been invited to speak once, but Nancy passed. And let's say that Seth is the last one to have been invited, and Seth speaks. You have your 10 seconds of silence. Nancy gets a second opportunity. So Seth would say, Nancy, I invite you to speak. And again, she has that option. But every time someone either passes or speaks, the group takes 10 seconds of silence. Anything else you want to say about this?
The other thing is that this is what you respond. So when you are responding, you don't say I agree or I disagree. This is you. And this is a safe place to say what you believe or what you're thinking. It's just your voice. And we don't do that very well. And we use this with sessions. We use this with any group. Any group we can do it. We do it over and over again, and people get used to it. So you're only going to have this one morning chance to practice it. So take your time and take it in. Listen deeply. It's almost a contemplative piece to listen deeply.
Okay. Once you've done this round, the second part of this discipline is to allow it. You know, Cheryl might have a question of something that Becky said. This second round allows questions of clarification. Only questions of clarification. Cheryl doesn't say, Becky, I really agree with you, and my 13-year-old kid did this, and I got some anger. It's not like that. It's if Cheryl heard Becky say something and she would like to hear more of what Cheryl meant, she can say, Cheryl, I would like to hear you say more about da-da-da-da-da. And then maybe Seth heard Rebecca say something, so he might say, Rebecca, I would like to hear you say more about. And again, every time someone is speaking, the rest of the group sits quietly and listens. This second round is optional. No one is required to ask questions of clarification. Okay? Do you have any questions about what you're going to be doing?
What do you talk about?
You'll find out
I'm going
in
to
just a
do
minute.
that.
Is the second round the mutual invitation too, or does everyone just pop up, they have a question, say they want?
You pop up and, yeah.
George, after someone responds to a clarification question, you keep the 10 seconds of silence again?
Yeah. Yes.
Is there a period of time after the question is posed for reflection or
Yes.
gathering
Yes.
of thoughts?
10 seconds.
Definitely.
10 seconds every time.
Yeah, they
Well,
told that.
she's asking as soon as the question is posed, if you
Oh.
jump right in. No, we'll do that with time. Rather than reading the entire John text to you that we typically do, I just want to share with you why we have chosen this text. This is the fishing text. You know, cast your nets the other side, and all the fish come in. And that's kind of where we leave it most of the time. And that's fine enough. Still getting congregations to cast their nets the other side is not easy. And if they do, not sure what they're going to pull in, and then what are they going to do with the new folks they pull in, that's always a good question. But fairly recently for one of our Presbytery gatherings, we're in 3 different mission communities, and Jan Edmondson, who is the co-moderator for our denomination right now, came and preached, and she focused on a different part of that text. just want to give you a bit of that to think about. Maybe while I'm talking, just close your eyes so you really hear and without trying to figure things out. Jan was associate exec, had just come into Presbytery as associate exec in Chicago. Was sent out to be with a women's group, a large women's group. And she went there and they didn't tell her what they wanted her to do. She knew it was going to be a lunch. She walked in, everybody's kind of sitting around talking to each other, and she realizes that she doesn't have any idea who these women are. And so she said, she just asked, I really want to get to know you today. That's why I'm here. I want to know what matters to you in the church. And so she read to inside her heart a song. She did not read it out loud at that time. But she thought a lot about the John text. You know, that part of the text? After this fabulous breakfast and a third appearance of Jesus with those who had followed him and run away and come back, and Jesus is right there with them. And Jesus says to Simon Peter, do you love me more than them? Feed my sheep. And then again, second time, after Peter says, oh yes, you know I do. Do you love me more than these? And Peter said, yes, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Tend my lambs. Do you love me more than? And by this time, Peter's frustrated as he can be. He said, you know everything. You know I love you. Feed my sheep. And the text goes on, and at the end, follow me. Jan asked the question to these women, what do you love about your church? And one by one, every woman in that group that day said, I love the windows. And Jan's heart ached. But it made her realize that we all love something. So the question for you today to sit and think about and share is, what does your congregation love more? What does your congregation love more than Jesus? What does your congregation love more than Jesus? Sit with that for just a few minutes. And you begin your grace margins.
Okay, Nancy, I invite you to speak.
Well, how do you know what's in somebody's heart? I love the people in our congregation, interested in all of, you know, their different situations and all. But how do you know what's really in their heart, you know? I mean, I know there's a lot of ignorance, Bible ignorance, for example, in our church as a whole. A tremendous amount. And then as you get older, you can't remember anyway, so, you know, I'm finished.
But there's a lot of
Cheryl, I invite you to speak.
I think from past experience in my church, which is a small, old congregation.
A small?
Small, less than 40.
Oh, wow, that is small.
And I'm the young kid in the church. That there's too much focus on loving the building as a piece of property. The weekly offerings and tithes go to supporting the building and not mission. Seth, I invite you to speak.
It's interesting how my response is changing somewhat as I'm listening. I'm thinking about meeting Christ in unexpected places, and how it's often in those unexpected places that Christ is sometimes much more visible than in the expected places. And I think that if I had to say what we love more is us, the sense of community, and I'm all for incarnational ministry, but it's so internal that finding Christ beyond us, in the other, in the stranger, in the person who looks different from us, who believes different from us, who acts different from us, is a struggle. And that's what I'm struggling with at the moment. Rebecca, I invite you to speak.
In this congregation, in this building, I think the general tendency is to love the extended family, love and acceptance and fellowship more than Christ. Only a little bit. I mean, this congregation has they're very welcoming to the stranger, as they've been taught that way. But some of the strangers who have come haven't stayed long, so there's a tendency to keep hanging out with the people that you already know in the congregation. That's it. I invite Greg. 10 seconds. Oh, 10 seconds. Okay, Greg. I invite you, Greg.
I don't know that I have anything to add. So I'll pass. Thank you for the invitation. And I will invite Becky.
We still got to wait.
10 seconds, yeah.
I was a member there in the early years. In between, they've gone through some difficult times.
Strangers don't stay.
And in 2000, they got some new pastors. They cared very much about this church.
So I invite Becky to speak.
Well, I don't have a congregation right now, but I can speak to the last, well, I was in 2, but I'll speak to the one that has the Presbyterian connection. There are a lot of different spiritualities, and people would say that their mission work and their caring for one another and their hospitality is in response to Jesus. They would say they're feeding sheep. They would say they are sheep, and that they've reached out to this and that kind of person. And I think they like their image of themselves as being inclusive and having few boundaries. Their image of themselves as always having good intentions, whether or not they are accountable to one another, or whether or not it's the law of good intentions where something goes wrong. But I think they like their image of themselves, and also there are lots of mission, not a particular strategy, but just lots of little not even one-off things, but they don't necessarily tie into one another. They like their image of themselves, and they don't talk much about their love of Jesus, because that's not their image of themselves as people who talk about relationship with their Savior. They're not that kind of Christian. So I think they like their image of a mainline church more than... I don't know what's in people's hearts. I can only go on what I see and what I hear. I think they like that image and want to preserve it at all costs. And I don't know if they love Jesus enough to try something new.
I guess I could do that. I think the thing that we have noticed, we don't have any, there's one young family that is respecting people's lives and ability. This is
It's my turn, huh?
It is. I invite you to speak.
Thank you. I agree to one thing, something that's already been said, and so I want to add that our church, I think, likes their church community. I think that's very important to a lot of the people. And we also have a fairly good music program, and they love the music of the church. The choirs, the bell choirs, the vocal choirs, we have an organ, a pipe organ, and a grand piano. So we have lots of things that speak to the music, and so I think music is probably one of the things that draws people there.
what does your congregation love amongst themselves? I think that a small congregation might serve as a level
We've all spoken, so does anybody have a question? I guess that would be the next.
I think you maybe invite Greg again.
Greg gets
Oh, yeah. I invite Greg to speak again.
I'm good.
I pass. Is that what you do?
Yeah.
I don't have a cold, something else.
Well, I would like to ask Greg a question because it's sort of kind of interesting that you're both from Florence. I don't feel like I have any idea. So, Greg, because Nancy tried, would you say, you said other people had said something, but would you say something? What is that other?
Well, I mean, Rebecca talked about people like people, or the community.
The fellowship.
The fellowship, yeah. And some of what Nancy also added. I mean,
Well, people need fellowship.
yeah, people. Well, and if we hold a strong incarnational theology, which I do, I mean, loving people is close to loving God, and serving your neighbor is close to serving God. So it's about where we are.
Do they love that more than Jesus?
That's not a question I have any way of evaluating. You know, it's like, do you like blue or red better? You know, what empirical evidence can you, I mean, I think we're all on the path to being faithful, and there are days I love my wife, and there are days that I can't stand her. But that doesn't mean I'm not loving her when I can't stand her.
We now have so we have about 90 members who have gotten so that we have 50 or 60 that come to our coffee hour after church. I see the clicks changing.
I could add to that conversation. I did a lot of pastoring in small congregations, and I did 5 interims, and one of the things that that I learned in seminary is different personality types. The Myers-Briggs thing was taught when I was in school. First of all, it helped me to understand why how I thought the way I thought, and why I was the way I was. It had to do with, that was when I found out I was an extrovert. But it was. The first thing I did when I came to a congregation was go visit everybody. And what I asked them was their faith story. And I learned that everybody had a different faith story and why they were at church. And it wasn't always about Christ, about why they were at church. So that's what I wanted to add to that, is some people, it's a safe place because they're lonely. Some people, and only about a quarter of our congregations are able to think theologically, actually. And I, of course, while I was there, tried to teach people how to think theologically, but it has to do with their upbringing and their personality type as to whether they can even, relate to that. Which that was the most interesting part of ministry for me, was how different people experienced God and why they were at church. But I often heard that no pastor had ever asked that person what their faith story was. And it has to, And so I've been very much on the affirmation of people getting up and telling their faith stories. And the new pastors here are doing that, and it's just once a month, and it's people who are willing, and that's cool because it works for the extroverts. But we need to do it in small groups, like in our fellowship groups within the church, where people feel safer to be able to share their faith stories. And that's where you're more likely to hear that Christ is maybe a little bit more important than the fellowship. But safe fellowship is a big thing. Anyway.
How it is, that's what I was saying, a little bit that happened.
I'm just curious. I have an open-ended question. If anybody's response was colored by the fact that we're being recorded and the internet is forever, and
no.
Just curious.
I forgot about it all too.
But thank you for bringing it up.
You're welcome.
Smile on Steve's face back there.
Yeah.
And you never know who's going to be watching it.
That's true. That might have been indiscreet of me.
Just something to think about.
I don't think so. You were describing your experience.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good idea what you said about the small groups and the faith journey, or with their conviction, and they might feel more free to speak about it in a small group.
Right.
And also it helps to make it more clear, and if you do that, if you can do it.
Right, if you can tell your story.
Yeah.
Because especially if you've already shared it once with your pastor, who is, quote, guaranteed safe, you hope.
Well, I thought
if you've learned that the pastor's not a judgmental person or something like that. But
I thought when you joined the church, you usually told your faith story, but maybe not. Maybe
Well,
sometimes.
not in Presbyterians.
Did that 40 years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Like, I do that in new member groups.
But I think the church in general is coming around to realizing that this is important, instead of just going, well, they should when they come before session. I think people usually do that, don't they?
I thought so, but
anyway. But it does help people to speak in front of the whole congregation if they've already told it to the pastor or in a small group. Anyway. 10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Yes, that's me now. Okay, we're going to keep moving, but let's take a minute or two and ask you a couple questions. First, what did you hear? Not what did you say, but what did you hear that helped you think about the question in a different way?
It was certainly, it was well considered when we spoke. And I love the 10 seconds of silence because I'm a butter-inner. I've been butting in for years. And I just love it, because I think that if I don't share this idea that I have right now, I'm going to lose it, which I actually often do. And so, but anyway, I've been that ever since I was a kid, so. Anyway.
Somebody else, what did you hear, what did you experience that gave you a different insight on the question? Yeah. Tim?
George, I was sort of shocked by the question, and the reason I was shocked is because you said more than Jesus. And that's such a, that is the core of Christianity, it's the core of our faith. And I think it's so easy for us to do all sorts of stuff around that and fail to realize the importance of our faith in Jesus and our love for Jesus in that. So when you asked the question, it really shocked me and made me go deeper into asking now, well, what is it then that our congregation does? And I greatly appreciate the answers, but they were very reflective and helpful.
So that hearing each person's response gave you another way of thinking about what the question was getting at, or might be getting at, or might be helping to open up. Yeah. Becky?
I think several of us started realizing, well, we don't really know if people love Jesus because we don't ever talk about it. So we kind of did a tangential thing. We went off on a tangent and we started talking about how it, you know, how we create opportunities for people to talk about their faith, but also why they're at church, because it might not have much to do with Jesus. But to me, that's such a personal question, and theologically, the issue of idolatry getting in the way of faithfulness is just always there. So my questions, it's a difficult question, because how would you deal with that in a community? We sort of confess it every week in some ways, but I don't know if we really get people to ask themselves that question. I think I ask myself that a lot. So anyway, we went off on a tangent, but how would you discover what people love?
Thank you. Yeah, Sid?
You know, I've run into that scripture over and over and over again, and just today as we were doing this, Jesus' question was, do you love me? But his response to Peter was, do something.
Okay, one more question and then we're going to move away from this. What was it like to go through this process, knowing that there were specific things we told you to do and not to do? What was that like?
That was hard.
Hard?
Yeah.
Are you a talker like Rebecca over here?
Or at least someone who wants to show that I'm listening by smiling and nodding, you know, to try and, you know, show that I'm paying attention. That was hard.
Right. Colleen?
I would say it was hard in a different sense, in that it didn't allow me to listen as closely as I might have just from my personal style. Not being able to move, not being able to use my hands, and almost not be able to think while you're listening is hard to do. And also, I like to process things, and there's not a lot of time to process in that way of doing things either. So, I don't know, it was almost more difficult for me to listen, I think, in that process.
Some people process out loud, and you can't do that.
I'm smiling at
It's also where we suck all the energy out of the room.
Yeah.
I often refer to our American way of having conversation as the American free-for-all.
Yeah.
And if any of you have spent time in other cultures, especially non-Western cultures, you discover that there are other ways that people socialize and communicate that are different than our American free-for-all. Any other comments about what this process was like, what it felt like, what you sensed and wondered about? Hugh?
I
I was impressed and want to commend this group for following the instructions. And
they're good kids.
They are good kids, yeah. I've used mutual invitation, like the Bible study that the moms do, and we always end up interrupting. And so for us to be able to stop and listen and not add our 2 cents worth to something that somebody is saying is amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking for you. You're covering up anything. Bobby.
I just have to say, as an introvert, I love this. I love this way of communicating. It gives you time to process for those of us that are introverts, and it eliminates constant chatter, so you can actually think through what you've just heard. It's a blessing for those of us that process this way.
Okay.
It takes practice.
It takes practice. Usually, and I was watching too, and usually the first time we do this with a group, there's a lot of laughter at the table, a lot of nervous laughter. After a couple people speak, then people start kind of giggling around, and there's a lot of movement. There was not a lot of movement today. But the more you practice it, especially before there's a crisis, where you really want to make sure that the voices are heard, the more that you take time in small groups, no matter what those small groups are, and practice this with a couple of verses of a text, or just a question that you think is important to the life of the church that you are part of. A simple question to give people time and really take your time. We're feeling hurried with it today a bit, and that's only natural because we've only got a limited amount of time. But you will see that if you practice it enough, truly, sessions that are willing to share a grace margin at the beginning of your session meeting, it changes everything. Because there are a lot of people who never get voice. You know that. You know that people who have louder voices and are more willing to share and don't mind if somebody likes it or not, those are the voices that get heard over and over again. And then other people who have strong thoughts and hopes, they just keep quiet. I taught a class at ITC years and years ago, and I had a guy there from an African student. It just broke my heart because at the end of class we had these times of sharing highest and best experiences. And he said the only time he felt that he was part of that class, the only time, and this was an African-American school, but he was from Africa, the only time he felt like anybody ever even knew his name was when we did the Grace Marching. It was a long semester, y'all. And it really made me think, and the more times we do this with groups, and especially with groups that we're working with over a period of time, we are very aware of how it changes the dynamics. The group dynamics change when people really can trust, and they don't trust the first time. I know that. But when you can really trust that you are not going to be criticized, and that you're going to be able to finally say how you're responding to whatever the question is or the word is, it makes a big difference. So this is a short trial. I hope you try it again as a spiritual practice, which it is.
Can you have more than 10 seconds between? That's such a short time.
You know what? It's a short time to you, but I've had students before who go, that's enough. You can make it as long as you want.
Yeah, you can make that adjustment, and that's one of the changes that we made. Again, this comes from Eric Law's book, The Wolf Shall Dwell with the Lamb. And we decided, especially Beverly tumbled to this early, that by allowing the 10 seconds, it gives people a chance not only to think about what they just heard, but not to worry about, what am I going to say?
Yeah, you never go in order around the table. You never do that. You, one of Eric's
tools that he used early on, because he was dealing with an Asian community that nobody was comfortable with in the bigger group that he was with, he had them turn away from the table. And so nobody was looking at each other when they spoke. And it changed the dynamics in that group. And really, people were not coming, it was a retreat. People were not coming back the second day of retreat. They were staying in their rooms. And after he did that, people felt safe.
Sure, it's a shame culture. And
it's a shame culture. And, you know, if you don't call me by name, I'm not going to speak anyway. I mean, that's part of that culture. We can't understand that because we're just going to blurt it out. But I mean, it is creating a real sacred, safe space. And as a spiritual director, the more time we can give for that, the more people are able to think in a different way. It just changes things. So.
Another quick example before we move. In all the debate that's been going on since the inauguration about what kind of legislation is going to get passed and the politics of all that, I remember reading in a news story real quickly that somebody who teaches yoga and includes meditation in it, I think I got this right, said in a news article, why can't we just get all the legislatures to meditate together before they make decisions? Well, you see how a process like this helps slow down the thought process, helps us be more contemplative, helps us find out more deeply, at least give people the opportunity to speak from their heart about something, rather than everything being about a negotiated detail. So Beverly and I really do commend this as a spiritual discipline, a group spiritual practice that can be used in session, can be used in PW meetings, can be used in your youth ministry committee, for God's sakes. It's all, focused on do. We want our kids to grow up to be balanced. And this, just think what it would do for our kids to learn this kind of practice as they're growing up and take that into their adult lives.
One quick one on that. I was asked to be the keynote speaker for a Presbytery youth event, Presbytery-wide youth event, and they gave me the topic. And the topic was breathe. And first of all, I didn't know why I was invited to do that, and I wondered why me, and probably said that, why me, Lord? Why me? That's not my thing to do youth. But we did Grace March in there outside one evening, and I was in tears before we finished. Those kids needed a place so badly to feel safe in responding, and I think all of us there were changed by it. And so don't ever think that your youth aren't searching for something more that they can hold on to. I don't remember the exact question I asked, but I remember that I was trying to help them find a safe, sacred space they could go to when they were in the midst of crisis, whether it was at school or at home or anywhere they found themselves. And I had notes from kids in that retreat for, 2 or 3 months. Just a note would come to the church from them, or an email saying, I was able to do that. And it changed everything for me. So, giving people a sacred space, and that's what you're doing in Grace March.